As a homeschool mom, I love open and go curriculum, but sometimes I want to use a resource that is not so friendly to the decision fatigued mom. Maybe it has too many moving parts, lots of different things to choose from. Maybe it's a resource without a curriculum guide at all, like a book of some sort. Or maybe it's a practice I want to do in my homeschool, like nature study or memorizing poetry. So what do I do if I have one of those? I make it open and go by making my own procedure list. What's a procedure list? I'm so glad you asked. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Barnhill and I help homeschool moms find freedom and flexibility in homeschool planning. What? You don't think freedom and flexibility go with homeschool planning? Well, I'm here to show you that they do. So be sure to hit subscribe or the little bell down below to be notified every time we have a new video go live. All right, today we are talking all about one of my absolute favorite things, and it is called the procedure list. Now, this is something I made up, but this is super simple lesson planning for homeschool moms, and I really love this. I make a number of these each year so that we could use them in our homeschool. Very simply, a procedure list is a list of things that you want to do whenever you study a specific subject. And there are a number of reasons why I make these lists, and I talked about a few of those in the introduction. Sometimes you have way too many activities to choose from in a particular resource. So let's take the Story of the World Activity Guide, for example. Wonderful book. It was written by a collaboration of a number of moms, and they all put their favorite books and their favorite activities in there. So you have this whole smorgasbord or this whole buffet of activities and books to choose from when you're using this activity guide. And it's great until you sit down on a Monday morning or a Sunday afternoon trying to decide what you're going to do the next week, and then it gets a little bit overwhelming. Which one of these do I choose? So the procedure list helps in that situation. Another time that a procedure list is really helpful is when you're doing something like studying birds. And let's say you want to study birds and you find 4 or 5 really great resources like the Thornton Burgess Bird Book. Well, that's not a curriculum, it's just a novel that you're going to read. And maybe a bird calls app and some great bird coloring pages and a bird bingo game. And you're like, well, I have all of these wonderful things and I know we want to study birds about 30 minutes each week, but what are we going to do each time we sit down to study birds? By planning it out ahead of time and having your procedure list, you're not going to have to think about it each time it's time to do your nature study each week. And then sometimes you're going to want to do something like memorizing poetry or drawing in a nature journal. And this is a practice that you want to put in your school day, but you're like, how do we go about this? What steps do we follow? This is where the procedure list comes in all of these instances. So you simply make a list of what you want to do each time you study any of these particular subjects. So let's go back to the Story of the World example. A few years ago, my kids and I used Story of the World, The Ancients. And so what we did each time we studied that was I would do these things. I would write the names, the proper names, the places, and the dates on a little mini whiteboard. So this was the list I was making. Write dates on the whiteboard. Then the next thing that I put on my list was read part of the chapter aloud. And then the next thing that went on my list was, while reading, have kids complete the coloring page. And then have kids narrate the chapter using the questions in the book. And then finally, the last thing was have the kids complete the map work. So this list of 5 things was what we did every single time we studied Story of the World. And it worked from chapter to chapter to chapter. And so I knew I needed copies of all the coloring pages and all of the map pages as well. And so I made those copies at the beginning of the term and kept them stored together with a folder. And it didn't matter when we pulled out Story of the World to do it, I knew exactly what procedures to follow and exactly what I was going to do. Now, some of you may be a little more spontaneous than I am, and that is completely okay that you are. And you may say, I want a little more variety when we study Story of the World. I want to do more of the things from that book. So if you wanted to do that, what I would suggest you do is at the bottom of that procedure list, add a number 6 that says optional activity. And then on the weeks that you felt like it, you could add that optional activity in. Now, since I'm kind of type A and a stickler and I like to know ahead of time where I'm going, I would be the kind of person who would make a list of all of the optional activities that I wanted to do from each chapter and make sure that I had the supplies for those on hand so I would be prepared. If you're more spontaneous than I am, then don't make a list just that week. Say, hey, we're doing an optional activity this week. Open up the book and pick which one you want to do. It really works both ways. But by writing down the steps of what you're going to do each time you study history, you begin to eliminate some of that decision fatigue that you might be feeling as a homeschool mom, and you feel a little more prepared even when life is going off the rails, the unexpected comes up, and you're having to deal with other things. So my tendency when that happens is to say, it's too much, we're just not going to do history, and it keeps getting pushed aside. Whereas in this case, I'm prepared, ready to pull out the book, and it's ready to go. Now remember, you can make procedure lists for any subject that needs one. If you're already using Open and Go curriculum, those probably don't need a procedure list. But for those other ones where there's a myriad of choices or some things that you're trying to put together for yourself, like say an animal study for your 6-year-old where you have a few different wonderful books, make a procedure list for those. I like to print a copy of them, stick them in the front of my homeschool planner, and then I refer to them often until 3 or 4 weeks into the school year, I've finally got them memorized and I know exactly what I'm going to do each time I sit down. Giving it that forethought, though, really helps me stay calm and collected and get that subject done, even if my day's going off the rails. So there you have it. Procedure list for your homeschool. We'll have some links down below for you, including a link to a place where you can go, a blog post, and get even more procedure lists that we've already made for you. So there are probably 10 or 12 different sample procedure lists for any number of things, and you can look at how they're made, and they're editable, so you can open them up in Google Documents and make a copy of them and edit those procedure lists and use some of them for yourself. We'll be back again soon with another great homeschool planning video, and hit subscribe down below so you'll be notified when we're back.